Okay.
It's 5 o'clock. We will call the Shoreline RFA Board of Commissioner meeting to order for a special meeting on December 17th, 2025. Do you want to do the pledge? Stand and do the pledge, please. Join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And for the record, it looks like everybody's here, either in Zoom land or in person, except Josh. He said that hopefully he'd be able to join later. So he does have an excused absence if he is not able to join. And Eric has got an excused absence too. Thank you. Chief, we're going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. So tonight I really don't have a presentation or a real agenda here. I just really wanted to have an open conversation with y'all and be able to answer any questions that you have. This has been in the works for quite some time, but the cost analysis was kind of the catalyst for now having some harder conversations of what our path forward looks like, and we can talk about what those options are. I printed out the most recent version for you. Lisa and Tyler, I'll send you the most up-to-date version. I updated it this afternoon as well, but I can also put it up on the screen if you guys would like. I want to make sure that I'm going to start off with the cost analysis, and then we can talk about options if you like, and then we can go wherever you want to go. The cost analysis, this sheet is a vast predominance of this is the lens of the RFA.
Can you put it on the screen for those two?
Sure. They have it. Well, I'll give you the most up-to-date version. Yep, that's it. And where's my shirt? Probably more. There it is. This one. Okay, Lisa and Tyler, can you see that spreadsheet? Perfect. Okay. So thanks. This is through the lens of the RFA, almost predominantly, except for what I tried to do off to the right there with the assessments of how this would impact the city of Bothell and Snow 10. And so the only thing I can absolutely guarantee you with this is that it's wrong. And I'm only half joking because this is a very high level strategic analysis. It is not a line by line. It's not specific in the details and all that. I would like to do that if we're moving forward and the city says, yeah, we want to put it on the ballot. That would probably be the catalyst for me to actually do that line by line comparison, like what I did with the North Shore RFA. So what I did in the different columns is I looked at the first column under B is our budget for 2026. Then I looked at under C is Bothell's budget for 2026. And then I started combining them and trying to figure out what the overall impact would be. And I looked at, and on the revenue side, they're contributing money from their general fund and they have a public safety levy. Some of that would come through, some of it wouldn't. Same with the other revenues down here. Some of these would come through and some of them would not. Like for example, we have ALS overhead, they do not, so that's no big deal. We would continue to collect on the EMS levy from Snohomish County, but then things like the Snohomish County 10 revenue, the contract that the city has, the 2.1 million, that's clearly not going to come through because they will be taxed and have the fire benefit charge as appropriately. So all of those things kind of combine, and I assumed, I'll go down to the expenses. I assumed that the expenses in Bothell, for the most part, are the expenses that we would absorb into our RFA, and with a few exceptions, which I noted down here. So the $17.4 million of expenses I'm just adding that into our operational expenses, and that becomes our new RFA expenses for this analysis, okay? With the exception that I've already taken out insurance up here, so I added an estimate of $165,000 of increased cost in insurance for us. There would be not having the cost in the Bothell Fire Department of paying us for our executive services ILA for my time, Chief Hochsteins and Andres, Orms. We would save on a couple of positions, the administrative manager and the division chief of ops. Of note is that right now in the budget is not a fire chief or anything. So if you really wanted to be an apples to apples, you could say, well, if they want to do standalone compared to being in the RFA, there would be a fire chief position in there too, but that's not the case because that's not in the 2026 budget. The executive services ILA is. And then an increase in the amount of governance. So at some point, if we are getting together, then we will be increasing our governing body, which we can talk about that later on too, if you'd like. So what this all means is, approximately $61.2 million of operational expense budget. This is not ALS. This is not capital or any of the other stuff that we would need to dive into deeper in a full analysis. So then what I did was I came back up to the top here, to the top right. This is the combined AV of the new, of what would be the RFA. And then I put in, I'm gonna skip down to the fire benefit charge first. I took an equal proportion of the AV that the fire benefit charge is earning for us now and applied that to the new RFA. So that comes out with 19.775 million for the fire benefit charge. And then I adjusted this levy rate to make this number down here roughly equal, roughly net zero, to get an overall equivalent levy rate of 82 cents. With me so far? So then I took that and we're projecting a $1.529 for our RFA. So that would be a savings, which I showed down below. The Bothell, this is where it really, really, really is, who knows? It'll be a policy decision by the city of Bothell as to what they are going to do with the savings or the costs and all of that. Because their revenue and their budget is very, diverse. It's spread out. They've got sales tax. They've got all sorts of other sources of revenue. So all I did was looked at the amount that's coming out of the general fund and the assessed to the property tax. I did not do anything with the fire benefit charge impacts on this. They would have, because the other piece to this is that we would need to take a much deeper dive on the fire benefit charge and see how that would impact residential owners. As you may recall, the fire benefit charge is weighted more heavily towards commercial and multifamilies. And so it'd probably create more savings for the residential side where there might be increases on the commercial and multifamily side. So again, that would be something we would do further down the road, and I'd engage with Neil Blindheim, he's our consultant, to do the same type of analysis of what we did with the North Shore RFA and do that for all the parcels in the RFA. So please understand that I would not look at the Bothell impacts really as a good litmus test on this analysis. But I do feel fairly confident that we're going to see significant savings for the RFA, and Snow 10 would see some pretty good savings too, which is shown down here, which takes the 82 cents, the equivalent 82 cents, and then what's the difference between what we're paying now, which is $1.05, and 82 cents, which is 23 cents of savings. Snow 10 would see not quite as much, 7.5 cents of savings. And just looking at property taxes, Bothell would go down. Again, big caveat, big assumption as to what they do from a policy decision on the revenue side and the impacts of the fire benefit charge. But this is the snapshot. And so I had confidence in this. I was actually pretty surprised that it was that significant. It made me kind of actually leery, to be honest. I shared this with the finance manager in Bothell to take a look at, and one of his deputies, I don't know his title, to take a look at and to try and figure out and poke holes at it. I've done an AI, analysis of this too, just to see what kind of risks and assumptions there are. I feel fairly confident, even if I'm off by quite a bit, there would still be significant savings. Unless I'm off by millions of dollars, there would still be, significant savings. So that's the really quick version of this. And again, very high level, very gross look at the analysis. Okay? That was really quick. Questions?
They don't have a fire benefit charge.
No, Bothell does not have a fire benefit charge, and neither does Snow 10. So,
I keep forgetting.
Snow 10, and Snow 10's it's up here in the formula.
Yeah. Oh, I know exactly where it is.
It's they have, we have 31 billion. Bothell has 20 billion, and Snow 10 has 2.7 billion. So it's of the whole piece of pie, they have a sliver there.
Yeah.
And it's up like in the northeast corner and the northwest corner of what you would think Bothell and Kenyon Park and west of Kenyon Park there. That's Snow 10. They have, the reason why they don't have as much savings is they already have a pretty low levy rate. There's that 89 cents right now, because they don't, aside from paying Bothell and board of 3 commissioners, they don't really have a whole lot more expenses, so they don't need to raise as much money.
But their costs, if they come on board, would have to include a fire benefit charge.
Right, and I do include the analysis with the fire benefit charge with Snow 10. I just don't do it with Bothell because of all the other stuff with Bothell. Does that make sense?
What I'm saying is they would have to have the fire benefit charge. They
Yes.
couldn't be without one.
Let me be clear. This would be because of the work that we have done over the past few years and earlier this year with the RFA with North Shore. Whatever they do, they're coming into our system the way it is set up now. Our formulas, our approaches, whatever we establish. Now there's things that we can flex with, but they're coming into our system. They will come in, they will need a 50% plus 1 vote, simple majority to join in, and they would join into our fire benefit charge, the way we've established it. This governing body would set the number, the amount that we want to raise from the fire benefit charge, but our formula, unless we changed up the formula, because we have a little bit of flexibility there even, whatever we have is what they're going to absorb into.
But it still takes a vote of Bothell people, doesn't it?
Correct.
Benefit
So
charge.
where we're at with this is, it's in the letter, and I can bring up the letter too, but is that we're at a point now where we've, like I started off the meeting, it's like we needed an analysis. We needed to see if this was financially viable to continue moving forward or not. And then for us to make a decision about what we want to pursue. And assuming we are moving forward, then we will kick this back to the city council or the city manager to speak with the council members and determine what they feel comfortable with and all that. If they feel comfortable with whatever direction we come up with, then we continue doing the work and we continue answering the questions and having the discussions, because we need to talk about transfer of funds for capital reserves, et cetera. There's a lot of other things that we need to talk about. I've asked them, the timeline I've asked them for is a decision by beginning of March, if we're doing the RFA, a decision by beginning of March, so that for an August ballot measure, so we would have those months, April, May, June, July, the 5 months to develop the outreach and the messages and all the other stuff that we need to develop. So that's okay. And before they even go to that ballot, we would answer those questions. He would come back for a formal invite from us. We would, or you guys, the governing body would decide whether or not we want them to come on and invite them, and then they'd make the decision and then do decide on the ballot. Tyler?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is this including, are we bringing on all their stations and apparatus and the full meal deal, or are they still going to maintain their buildings and stuff?
That's a great question, and some of those details would have to be fleshed out. But We haven't had those conversations, but that would be my intent. I'm not interested in having them continue to own. Why would they continue to own the fire stations if we're managing it and incurring the costs of upkeep and so forth? So the good news there is that they have two new fire stations, 42 and 45, and 44, which is the Snow 10 fire station, is going through a major remodel right now. So that's all good from a capital standpoint, but we would need to dive into our 20-year capital replacement strategy and figure out how much money that, how much of an increase that would create on an annual basis, and figure out what we would need for a transfer, you know, all of those things. So that's a great question that we would need to answer down the road, Tyler.
They've got a lot of debt right now.
Oh, thank you. Because I was going to mention this when Tyler asked me that question. I did get the question from the finance manager of what they would do, or what we would do with their capital bond, which I can't speak for the board, and that's what I said. I said I can't speak for the board. That would be a board decision. I said, but I can almost guarantee you that they would take the same approach as what we did with the North Shore, and a voter-approved debt stays with the voters that approved it. And so that bond would stay with them until it was paid off. And I used the UTGO that Shoreline had, the UTGO that is done now, and the UTGO that North Shore has that's done in 27 as examples of those are things. And frankly, I even used a good example of, frankly, if you had not done that, the bond and replaced those stations, I'd be asking for $40 million worth of capital transfers to be able to do those stations. So one way or another, those stations needed to get updated, and it was very expensive. It was very expensive. So they have a capital bond. They do have a public levy, this Bothell Public Safety Levy, which is for the operations side. They have the capital bond, which isn't shown here at all. But they also have a public safety levy that pays for firefighters and police officers, 10 firefighters to be exact. I kept that in there because in my conversations with the finance manager, because he asked me about that too, and I was like, that's again a voter-approved levy that's generating more revenue than the 1.9 million. I think it's actually on this other page. I think it's 6.2 million.
There's sunset on it?
It's 6.27 million that that levy generates. They would collect whatever they get. Again, this is a board decision. I'm just my suggestion is, and then they would transfer whatever the cost is for 10 firefighters over to us until that levy runs out.
Bruce is online, is that?
Okay.
Gallatin?
Yeah, that's Bruce Green. Yeah, these are consultant. So, these are some great questions. These are some of the things that we would need to answer and you know, and list out in a document so that it's not just us talking.
Because what I'm looking at is if that has a sunset on it, then at the end of that sunset,
We would have to.
we've got 10 firefighters to pay for that we.
Yeah. It goes out through, I want to say 2031. It's on here. Thought it was on
Yeah, it is 2031. I looked it up.
here. Okay. I thought even it was. I think it's 2031. So for the next, 5 years, they would be paying for that levy. By then, I'm not too worried about that because by then AV and everything else, we'll be doing other things more than likely by that point anyway. And realistically, whether they're paying for it now and then we increase, if once it's down, if we have to increase up a little bit on our equivalent, they're still paying for it. But it would be homogenized and amortized across the entire new RFA.
Yeah.
So
What about their capital equipment, long term? What was City Hall do for that?
they have an asset replacement schedule, very similar to ours, actually. I've got a copy of it. I've started to look at it just to see what kind of methodology they take. Very similar to ours. I have not, and it's all of the city assets, so I need to pull out the fire department side of it. And that would be, again, one of those things I would do. I don't want to do a whole bunch of work, if we're not moving forward. So these are some of those things that we would, continue to work on it, depending on what path forward we choose to go.
Is it funded?
Yeah, they fund, in fact, it's funded. They fund it, for 2026, it's funded with 618,000. Oh, I forgot to mention this. So they're funding it right now at 618,000 for 2026 as seed money, for their thing. Even I put in just for comparable analysis here, I put in $1.75 million for 2026 from us. But remember, we had extra funds purposefully from the general fund. So in 2026, we're not transferring, or we're not pulling money out of the operating budget to fund our annual capital allocation. But I just, for apples to apples comparison, I put a note at the bottom here saying this too. But for apples to apples comparison, because that's what we were supposed to put in 2026, I put that in there just to show. Does that make sense?
There's a long ticket, so yeah.
Yeah. So again, the good news is that we have significant savings. Again, I don't know, it'll be a policy decision on what Bothell wants to do and all that. We need to be transparent about anything that happens with Bothell, and the city manager and I have had multiple conversations about that to make sure that everybody understands that we're going to be, doing a transparent analysis and be able to communicate that out. If it's neutral or less, great. If it's more, then they're going to stand up and say why.
So,
Okay, so any questions about that? Because I can move on to this. Or do you have questions? I mean,
I've
sound
got
like you started.
financial questions.
Okay, fine.
Anybody else have questions? Okay, we're a district. I know where our money comes from and how we get it. They're a city. They collect all their fees. How is this going to work? How are we going to get the money from Bothell to fund Bothell firefighters, Bothell equipment, Bothell stations?
The same way we do now.
They're
If they,
They're going to decide how much to give us?
no. If they join the RFA, they are de-annexing the fire department from their scope of work.
Okay,
That's why the AV is jumping up by $20 billion for us.
so that money is all coming to us.
Right.
It's not going to Bothell to
No,
give to
the-
us.
With the exception of that public safety levy.
Okay, I can understand that.
Okay, because they've already assessed that levy and they'll be collecting that levy because it's more than because it's allocated between police and fire. So our AV goes up from 30 million to 30 billion to 55 billion, and we charge our fire benefit charge an equivalent levy rate across the entire AV to generate the revenue just like we do now. Now, we still have other revenue sources, our other contracts and EMS money and all that other stuff. But the predominance of our funds, the way it comes in now, would be the same way there. And we would have a similar relationship to Bothell like we have here with our fire marshal's office, where we work with them for impact fees, or we work with them for permit fees or plans review and all that. But predominantly that relationship is limited to the fire marshal's office.
How do you envision a governing board working?
That's I'll just tell you what I think, and then you guys can tear me apart on it if you'd like. So I think we should enter into it as collaborative partners, like we did the same approach with the North Shore Fire Department, and say we've got 5 shoreline, 5 North Shore, we go 5 elected, because they need to be elected. We go 5 council members from Bothell and immediately turn around in 2027 and bring it back down. I am not you've heard me say this, I'm not super excited about a board of 15. So we could, and that would take on potentially a couple of different options for us. We could set up commissioner districts. We could reduce, from 5 and 5 to 3 and 3. We could, there's a number of different things we could do at that point, but I would like to get it back down.
As we're growing, I've been thinking about that too, about having multiple cities here, so something about having a city partner being on the board for each one of the cities.
Right.
That's one of the governors we can look at.
Yeah, and to be on the governing board, to be on this governing board, you have to be elected. So it could be a commissioner or it could be a council member.
Right.
It doesn't really matter. I believe, and I don't want to speak for the city of Bothell. I believe that they would really lean into having their council members sit on this board, whether it's as part of commissioner districts or we do commissioner districts for Shoreline Lake Forest Park, Kenmore, and then Bothell gets to put 2, 3, council members on, or whatever they're going to do, whatever we decide that we feel comfortable with. That would be another one of those questions that we would need to answer over the next, month or two of what we feel comfortable. And if we are moving forward, that we could invite them and have a collaborative, meeting about it even. But I think the right thing to do would be to go in equally and collaborative, and then look at trying to get down to whatever number we want to get down to.
We got Snow 10 too.
Snow 10 is not, first of all, they have a very small piece on the AV side. They really don't have as much of a vested interest. Plus, the 3 commissioners, 2 of them want to be done. They've said that, multiple times, and I'm glad I'm really not out there publicly on this, because I don't know if it's really public. They've shared it with me. They shared it with the other board members that 2 of them want to be done. In fact, they wanted to merge into Shoreline last year, and I said no. I was like, no, we need to do this all together, because I was like no, and so please don't. And so 2 of them, want to be done and all that, and one of them is currently an employee of the Shoreline Fire Department. So that would have to be, he would not be able to be part of this anyway. So I don't believe that there is an issue there. But that would be another question to confirm. I have talked with the chair of that board multiple times on this, and he felt that they don't need representation as soon as we get this all figured out. So, but another question that would need to be answered.
So it is currently Bothell, they're on Shoreline's CBA.
Yes, so they have adopted, so the financial analysis on the expenses, the labor cost, which is predominantly what we, out of our operating budget, it drives 75-80% of our budget. They have adopted our CBA language and pertinent policies that affect working conditions. Not all policies and not all financial pieces too. For example, the Bothell firefighters are still City of Bothell employees. They're covered under their insurance and everything, but they have adopted our salary schedules and all of our financial stuff that affect wages and working conditions and all that. All of that is in their language that they just adopted.
So the plan, the retirement stuff and all that will have to be negotiated how that's handled.
Correct. So,
Similar.
yeah, but the good news is that we're very much aligned with all of this has been intentional about these different steps that we've taken to get better alignment, to make this easier to do, if we choose to do it. And that alignment is just continuing. In 2026, there won't be much difference between their working group, their body, and ours, as far as schedules, the salary and working conditions and all that. Insurance and some of the benefits that are still sitting with the City of Bothell will still remain until they become Shoreline employees. But the rest of it's pretty consistent.
How does their apparatus align with ours?
They have good, so overall they're in a good place. They are in a much, much better place than they were it's in the letter. In 2015, they pursued a RFA, and we were actually part of that initially. they pursued an RFA and it took way too long to get to the point where they made a decision. But one of the bigger issues back then was they had 2 stations that were in terrible, terrible shape, which they fixed because they've got new stations. They're almost 3 years old now. And their apparatus has always been fairly good, but they've also invested in new apparatus. For example, Snow 10 and Bothell both. The Snow 10 still buys apparatus too. They have an engine on order, Snow 10 does, and Bothell has where, in fact, you saw it here just last week. We did a major refurb of their existing ladder truck, and they've got a new one on order that's early 27, Matt? The Pierce? They do the pre-con next summer. So anyway, it doesn't matter when. They've invested properly in their apparatus as well. As far as how the setup of the apparatus is compared to ours, because that was a bit more of a challenge than I think I anticipated with the North Shore, because North Shore and Shoreline were fairly different, and we're still, and we're pulling the Band-Aid off that in 2026 as well, investing in making sure that they're both consistent. The Bothell fire engines are closer to Shoreline than North Shore was at the time that we did the contract, the ILA. I can't swear to everything that that it's all going to be completely consistent. Right now they have a mix of a few different manufacturers. They have the Suffin, they have an H&W, but they are moving to Pierce as well. So there's some consistency there too. So, and now that we're doing their fleet, which we've been doing since February, and Patrick is overseeing all of that, we're starting to see alignment with specs and so forth too. So.
The new ladder truck is paid for.
Their new ladder truck is not paid for yet, but that would be something that we would make sure that is taken care of in that transfer of assets. Either they pay for it or the funds are there transferred to us to pay for it. Their first payment is coming up, it's actually being done right now. Their first payment of $500,000. The truck is I think it's about $2 million. And again, we have, I think there's 3 payments. An initial payment, another like $500,000 in the middle, and then the final to make up whatever the difference is. That's the schedule that they're on. So again, that would be in the details. So, well, I mean, at the bottom line is that we're not going to subsidize them. They need to come in on good footing. And so if they have debt, if they have outstanding debt on apparatus, then that's calculated into what that transfer is of funds or assets or whatever it is. Same with another big question is left one liabilities. I don't even know how many they have actually, but are they going to keep them or are they going to transfer them? If they transfer them, they need to transfer funds for us to cover that liability. Again, similar. We need to be take a similar approach to what we did with North Shore. I think we learned some things with the North Shore. Combining those two that will give us better understanding of how to navigate this moving forward too.
Okay.
So moving
Tyler has a question before we move on.
Thank you. Sorry, I should probably look and see if there's hands up. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I was just wondering, you talked a little bit about the staffing, and so it looks like I would imagine that Bothell's staffing as far as the fire floor is very similar with their minimum staffings and the employees that they have. But I'm curious about the administrative side. Are there going to be any people that are going to be laid off that wouldn't get moved over, anything like that?
Another great question. I mean, all you guys have great questions. The admin staff is, there's pretty good timing on this because the only one that I would be concerned about coming over is the administrative manager over there who has stated her intent to retire in the middle of this next year. So the timing is pretty good from an efficiency standpoint, and that's why I show her as a savings on the expense budget. The other position is the division chief of operations, which I mentioned to you. I moved her to the deputy chief of administration, and we would likely bring her over into a role over here that would help us with some of the workload. The other administrative positions that are there, we would need. So there's two other administrative positions, general administrative positions that help with the just finances and regular administration of the department. There's one administrative specialist that helps with the fire marshal's office, and they have a PIO. So it's a very limited, because it's a municipal fire department too. They have an HR division, an IT division, a facilities division, administrative finance, all that. Over there in the city, they don't have as much infrastructure or administrative staff infrastructure as what a department normally that size would be. So I feel, I'm not gonna say 100%, but very confident that we would not only need the people that are there, that we would not, if they want to come over, they will have a job here. If they want to stay in the city, then the city will absorb them and we'll go hire somebody else. But I don't believe that anybody will be forced to lose their job.
So with that
Still don't see
said,
Josh
Chief,
yet.
yeah, I was looking too. That's why I seen Bruce up there, but not Josh. With that said, are we certain that these people would come over or just stay with the city? And I'm asking because I know that we've got positions that are opening up here and we seem to kind of be on a pause to see what Bothel's gonna do. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's kind of a yes and yes. So in the first question is, do we believe that they want to come over? I'm not prepared to ask them formally on that until we're, going further down this road. But informally, they are all excited.
Okay.
So they all, would want to come over.
Would Bothell let them come over?
Well, they would,
Or is it part of the fire department or
they're part of the fire department. That's an interesting question.
would city of Bothell managers
I don't
and
think-
stuff say, no, we're keeping you here?
They could always quit and then
Well,
get
they could.
rehired. I guess that's a great question. I guess I had thought about that.
Well, as far as we
So-
go, it'll be funding that we have to cover anyway.
Yeah,
So it doesn't matter if they.
I would guess that the city would not fight on this, because if they do, then that would mean that they really need them to fill other positions in the city, because otherwise it's an extra expense that they would need to absorb. But that's and that's not our decision. That would be the individual's decision to say, I want to stay in the city, or they're offering me a bunch more money and I'm going to stay in the city, or I'm going to quit and I want to come over. If the city, the city really can't stop them from.
So it's an unknown answer.
It's an unknown, but informally, I've had they're all excited. I've had good conversations. I'm not ready to formally ask them that, but what I have said informally is that I believe that nobody would lose their jobs. To Tyler's point, I've told them informally that I don't believe anybody would lose their jobs, because we would have a need, and that if they wanted to come over, that they would have a position. What that position is, I can't guarantee, but there would be positions for them here. The second half of your question, though, is what are we doing with our administrative positions that we need now, and are we waiting for Bothell? The answer there is we are, as you know, we are filling positions now because we have needs. There are some needs that will increase with Bothell coming over, and that's where I would bring those people over to help fill the increased workload needs at that point. So, for example, we've got a lead finance and two finance specialists. Do we need a third? Could one of them come over and fill that position? We've talked about the needs for support services, and not only, at potentially, administrative help or project help or, other things. And Matt he'd probably, take it out on me if I told him, yeah, you're absorbing 3 more fire stations and I'm not going to give you anything more, as far as support. He'd be like, yeah, that retirement's looking much better. So to answer your question, we're trying to fill our needs now, but also we are looking at what those next steps look like. And especially if we are looking at increased workload of what it's going to take to address that increased workload in the bigger RFA. Just trying to do a better job of looking for hands. So, okay. So the document in front of you goes through some different options and it's already come up, because of some of the timing on this with administrative staff, especially that administrative manager. This is, I don't know if timing's ever perfect, but the timing is pretty good to look at doing something in 2026. Because if we don't do something, if Bothell doesn't do something in 2026, then I need to go find a new administrative manager. And I need to look at potentially some more permanent decisions about some of the infrastructure over there. But if we are moving forward, then we can look at some temporary fixes or, there's different options. And I've kind of, come up with probably 4, 5, 6 different, staffing options to fix things. But I guess my point with this is that the timing is pretty good for 2026. Plus, I'm going through I'm going to be here in the next couple of months, starting the process of the 2027-2028 biennial budget for Bothell. So if we are moving forward, then being out of the fire department business at the end of next year would make a clean start for their 2-year budget that goes into effect on January 1 of 2027. So there's a few things. Are any of these things absolute deal killers? No. I mean, we can get around almost any of this. We're firefighters. I mean, that's what we do. But the timing is pretty good. The question that I've heard, and I've talked with Eric Admin and Josh about this, and some of you guys as well, is why the RFA and not a full services ILA? And the reason there is that them joining the RFA is actually easier than doing a full services ILA, and we wouldn't have to turn around and do an RFA at some point after that. And we get the efficiencies immediately as opposed to not. Certainly, there are some benefits to doing the full services ILA of allowing an easier exit strategy if it's not working, things of that nature. But again, for me, I'd rather pull the Band-Aid off and go forward with this. One of the things that has been challenging in this, for all of us over the last, especially 4 or 5 years, has been the potential change that's always been kind of in the mix. It was, going back to 2015 even, we were talking about a 4-way RFA, and then that kind of fell apart. Then it was a 3-way RFA, and that kind of didn't happen. And then it was, then we were not, we got voted off the island, and they were doing something else. And there's been a lot of change over the last decade in regionalization. And I feel, starting with about 4 years ago when we did the full ILA with North Shore, that was a great step. That was a great catalyst to make the formalization of the RFA earlier this year. But for me, I'm just going to be selfish and just say I would like to get this done and be done, and let things settle out and reestablish some of the things that we need to work on and have some stability for our personnel, because it is weighing on them. The unknown, you mentioned it too, of like, are we waiting on some of these positions? And some of it is we are waiting, but some of it is also potential workload. And our staff are already thinking about what that potential workload looks like. So if we're delaying those decisions, that continues to weigh on everybody. And I'd really like, you've heard me, and I keep it on our agenda of getting back to establishing a good strategic plan. And we really can't until we know where we're going. And for me, that's kind of one of the reasons. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to look at the RFA versus the ILA. The city council they have not had robust conversations about this. They've had one-on-ones with me, with not specifically on this. I've had one-on-ones with all of them, just to get to know them. They've had one-on-ones with Kyle Stannard, the city manager over there, to talk about this. They know that this is something, 4 years ago, when they had robust conversations at the city council level of evaluating all the options that was regionalization. They had a lawyer come down. It's actually, he's from Matt Paxton's outfit. He came down, and I remember remotely watching it. He spoke for 2.5 hours about all the different options. Some of them were absolutely not even really viable. But through all of that, they had robust conversations and kind of landed on RFA, not 100%, but 98.5%. I mean, they were that. This is one of the big reasons why we did the RFA. With North Shore earlier, we could have merged the districts far easier and set up geographical, commissioner districts or something to get the geographical representation. We did the RFA. A big reason, in my opinion, was to set up for Bothell, because that's kind of where they landed. They are going to do something with somebody, almost guaranteed. They through those conversations, they recognized, realized, and evaluated what the viability is long term for a 2 or 3 station fire department, and they're like, this isn't good. We need to do something with somebody, which is why they asked for the proposal from us and from Eastside, because they want to stay in King County. They don't want to go to Snohomish County. So those things are still on the table, and so I think there's a lot of stars that are aligning to as to why an RFA makes more sense now. And you were talking about staff too. Understand too that the weight on our staff, especially on the administrative staff too, and operations staff, about the unknown, that weighs on. The Bothell Fire Department has had they haven't had a permanent executive structure for almost 4 years now. Between Bruce Crone, who was the previous fire chief, and then Mark Reisman, who was the interim fire chief, and now me, they're in this kind of this limbo mode too. So they are eager, they're hungry, for this, a lot of the same reasons I've already talked about, for getting this figured out, whatever it's going to look like, and start moving forward.
Do you know what the deal is with? They're no longer pursuing Eastside. I guess that's one way to say it.
Well, I think if we weren't in the mix, if we hadn't done all these things, these other things, we've got great alignment between the fleets and the CBA language and managing staffing and the administrative, all this stuff leads us. But if we weren't in the mix, I think they would look back and say, I'm not going to cast stones, but I don't think they're looking super favorably that way. But that would be an option for them, or Kirkland, or something, bigger, more regional, I guess. But there's not a lot of options for them, but there are some.
In my mind, there was 2 options. It was viable.
I mean, and they could reevaluate going north and going into Snohomish County, but they haven't. I wouldn't say they completely closed that door, but it's a fairly closed door.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm not going to waste time and go through the pros and cons. I'll answer any questions. I mean, hopefully you guys had a chance to read it. And it's not all. It was just kind of the higher level stuff, the pros and cons and benefits and all that, that we have identified. The executive team, in preparing the document. So
what are you looking for?
Great question too. So what I'm looking for tonight, and I put this in the email last night too. So we are absolutely all in, diving into the, we're inviting them and all that. No. We need to answer a lot more questions. What I'm looking for now is, what direction do we want to pursue and encourage and ask them to pursue with us? And because really it's on us. It's our decision. It's our RFA. If we want them to join the RFA, fine. If we want to pursue the full service ILA, okay. I prefer the RFA, but at the end of this meeting, what I would like is a consensus of, this is the direction we want to pursue. We share that with the city, and they decide whether or not they're comfortable with going that direction too. If they are, then we go and we start answering some of these other questions that have come up either tonight, and I've got, another list too. And we start answering the rest of the questions and getting the package together so that by beginning of March, they can say, yep, all feel good. This is the direction. And even if it goes a little bit later than March, okay, but March has been kind of our date because the August ballot will come up and we need not so much here, but there, they need to do community outreach and need to have messaging, and they need to do all the work that we have already done over the past year and a half, pursuing our own RFA. They need to do that. And so we need to make sure that we give enough time, for them to do that. So what I'm looking for tonight is hopefully support for the RFA and agreement that we can continue to do the work that is necessary to get the package together.
I came on board 7 years ago for regionalization. That's what I was looking for, what we've been working for. So I think we need to pursue this. So that's my consensus.
I know that, is there any? No. I know that I had a chance to speak with Eric before he went out of town. He stated his support for the RFA, but he would also support the ILA if that was if the city isn't excited about the RFA. But he looked at the cost analysis and was like, yeah, the RFA looks good.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't meet the timeline for 2027, how easy is it to push it to 2028? Like with their stuff, like them.
Yeah. If we were delaying, then I'd have to address those gaps that I was talking about earlier, the administrative gaps. And that becomes more difficult because I don't want to be able to look somebody in the eye and say, yes, you're going to be our assistant manager, but it's only for another year.
Sure.
So I would need to look at the timing to see what that looks like, and to Kim, to your point of like what our overall needs are. If we were to fill that position, would there be a potential position in the RFA for that person? It just becomes more difficult, but everything's doable. I'm not going to say we couldn't. It would just become more clunky in some ways. But it might be the best we can do. The reason why I'm doing just to be clear, to make sure everybody understands, the reason why we're doing an August ballot and not a November ballot is because if we're not in the August ballot, then we don't get the funding authority in 27. We'd have to wait till 2028 anyway. So if we wait till November of next year for the general election, we would be waiting till January 1 of 2028 for full funding authority. Does that make sense? Okay. Again, it's doable. I mean, but all of these things come with, some pros and cons to them.
Tyler, Lisa, do you have anything that you want to add to it, or?
I fully support. Go ahead, Lisa.
I'm comfortable moving forward for an RFA.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll second that with Lisa. I think that going for the RFA versus a interlocal agreement would be a much better option for everybody. My only question with that August election, you said there has to be 50+1 for approval of it. Is there anything that goes along with the amount of voters that turn out?
The validation, I don't believe I'm pretty sure, but not absolutely 100%. I could make sure, I could look into it and confirm it, but I don't believe we have validation. I don't think there's a validation requirement for any of the RFA votes. We didn't need to validate for ours. And so I believe that would be, again, I'm not 100%, but close to it, that it would not need validation.
That's the only thing that would be a concern versus doing during general.
And again, the good news is that we only need the simple majority too, because we've already done laid the groundwork with the fire benefit charge. The reason why we needed to do 60%, a supermajority earlier this year, was because we were reestablishing the fire benefit charge. Even though we both had them, the RFA is brand new, and a brand new entity with a brand new fire benefit charge triggers a supermajority. That is not the case with Bothell joining. It would be a simple majority. wish Josh was here, but I did have about an hour-long conversation with him last night. I don't want to speak for him, but I think he was in the same support that I've heard so far, and where Eric was as well, which was RFA. But if we can't do that, then the full services ILA. Again, I'm not speaking for him. I'm just trying to communicate out because I would have thought he would have been here.
Barb, still absorbing?
Well, I feel better now. A lot of my questions were answered originally in your emails. But my main concern was how much control would the city have? And it doesn't sound like they'll have any control because they're coming into our system.
Correct. They everything that we have in place is what they would absorb into. Now they would have seats on the governing board, but they wouldn't have a majority. They would. I mean, and again, that would be a bigger discussion that we need to have about what that governance looks like. But it's not like they're going to come in with 10 board members and then and be able to outvote us. They will have seats on the board, but that's it as far as control.
So are there enough fire stations over there for the demand? I looked up the population.
So since you asked the question,
major.
so you asked the question, so I'll share with you my vision for if I had my druthers and I had everything lined out perfectly. We do the RFA next year. In 2027, we do two things. First, reduce the governing board back down to a more manageable level somehow, and that's up to this board to figure out. And we can figure out like through attrition and however we wanted to design it. But the second is a big one, which is I would ask all of the voters of the new RFA to do a UTGO capital bond to build 62 and a South Bothell, South Kenmore station. South Bothell has this, you guys are all fairly familiar with the South Kenmore situation, correct? What we went through sometime last year when we were talking about getting rid of the property. Rick was really involved in that. The South Kenmore area has about 500 calls a year that are south of the SCLU that are being served by, in South Kenmore, by Kirkland. South Bothell has the same problem, but it's bigger. It's about 1,500 calls a year in South Bothell. And those calls are predominantly being, the critical calls at least, are being responded to by Kirkland and Eastside. This has been on the strategic plan since 2000. There have been 3 different presentations, and I'm due to make another one to the city of Bothell. Regardless of the RFA, they have to address this situation. But we also have talked about doing something at 62 to relieve pressure off of 64. And so if we were to do this big RFA, I would turn around and I would like to do a UTGO across the entire RFA, the new RFA, to do a new station there and station here that would help with levels of service in Bothell, levels of service in Kenmore, and levels of service in Shoreline. Lake Forest Park would be left out, I guess. But I'm joking about this, but everybody benefits from this, from relieving some of the pressure that's in our system. So rough numbers, if we were to do, say, a $45 million bond over 10 years, that's about 8 cents, 8 point something cents per year for 10 years. Not hugely significant to everybody here. It would be a bit more of a bitter pill to swallow, because back to the question that was earlier, they had a very big capital bond that built the 2 stations plus a bunch of other stuff over in Bothell. So Bothell would double up on a capital bond payment. The 8 cents that we would be charging, I want to say they're charging 12 or 13 cents over 20 or 30 years.
Do we want to get into this
That's a long.
before they join the RFA? I mean, it's a good conversation to have. But
yeah, I mean, and actually, it could be part of the RFA, but even if the RFA doesn't happen, they still have to be thinking about this and be acting on this, because 1,500 calls-ish is not trivial. You know, when you get to that 600, 700, 800 calls a year, that's typically when you move from a volunteer fire department to some kind of paid, staffing, and they're over double that.
So that'd be 3-person houses, so roughly about 28 FTEs.
So,
RFA.
again, we're really getting into the weeds. We would likely, we would probably start off, with like a 3-person, either dedicated engine or jump crew or something like that, and then move on from there. 62 is only going to do 600 to 800, 900 calls a year total. So it's at the lower end of that. So that would definitely be just a 3-person crew. Over in South Bothell, we probably start off with a 3-person crew, but we haven't even started talking about what the staffing would look like, because we also have a slow station up at 44. Up the Snow 10 station is a pretty slow station as well. So we would have to take a hard look at what the right performance targets were. So that was a vague answer of like, we haven't figured that out yet. I don't want to commit to that.
So I looked at their budget. 2024 was the only one, they didn't have a 2025 that I could see. And right now they're $1 million over budget.
The city? I have no
Fire
idea.
department.
Oh,
So what are we inheriting, I guess?
what are we,
What are we inheriting? In terms
the Bothell Fire Department it's close to on, but it's the overtime that's killing their budget. And it's not $1 million over budget. I don't know what it is.
2024, so I don't know.
And it's hard for, the other piece to that too, just like our budget, when we have a lot of deployments, it shows up as a cost, but not a revenue. So, so the deployments, they absorb the revenue into their general fund, and we show, the fire department shows over budget. So I could try and figure that out, especially as we finish out this year. I'll have a better, view of that.
I'd just be curious.
I'm not. It's really an interesting situation for me because I'm not as involved in the finances over there, because they have a finance division in the city that manages all that. Our administrative manager over there, she manages and makes sure the bills are paid and all this, and she can answer. She's very knowledgeable, very talented, and she can answer any of the questions I've asked her. And the last time I wanted to say we were, it's like a little over 200,000, 300,000 that we were over budget, and it was almost all due to overtime. Their staffing levels they've had some disabilities and retirements and stuff. They have a much different, not to digress too much, but they have a much different process for hiring firefighters, which drives me batty. They can't hire for a position unless there's a vacancy. Well, as we all know, it takes time to get somebody through, so they're always behind, with their staffing levels, and which is unfortunate.
And that's because of the city.
Yeah.
So looking at things like that, the city has a very different way of doing things than we do. We really want to bring all 5 board members, not board members, but city council members on board.
Well, they don't manage the fire department. They manage the city. I mean, they're part of the overall city management, they don't manage the fire department. I just have to constrain to the rules that the city has, the civil service and all
So
of that.
why would we bring them over then if they don't have anything to do with the fire department?
Well, because they're just like, when we did North Shore, they're going to want to have representation in making sure that that the interests of Bothell are being addressed, just like Lake Forest Park, just like Kenmore, just
We
like
don't
Shore.
have to have 5 city council members on the board, do we?
We have to have electeds. We have to have council members would be
Right.
Yeah.
But do we have to have all 5?
Well, they have 7, but I mean, it's not all of them. But no, it's up to the board to decide. That would be a board decision. That's not my
Oh,
decision,
yeah,
that's
well,
your
okay.
decision.
All right.
I'm just saying, if we really are trying to be,
General, right?
the bigger people and being really truly collaborative, we should look at some equal representation and then figure out what the long term looks. Because over time, all of this, just like we've already started to see the Lake Forest Park and Kenmore, whether you come from Lake Forest Park or Kenmore or Shoreline or Bothell, over time, you're gonna look at the fire department as the fire department, and you're gonna be doing what's right for everybody. And so I at least, and maybe I'm just being, optimistic and all that, but that's how it should be. I would argue that none of you guys look at this and like, does that benefit Lake Forest Park? Or does that benefit Shoreline? And have that adjust your decision making.
No, I think
You
we've
guys
come
look at
together
things
as a team.
and what is the best thing for our organization and all the communities that we serve. So I understand, I have some of that angst too, of like what that influence looks like, but over time, I think that goes away too.
But we were elected by the citizens of Shoreline.
Yeah, I was,
So there
You
is
guys
some-
were.
Correct.
But,
No, I'm just giving my perspective.
yeah,
That's
We were
all.
elected.
I am looking at this through the lens of the Shoreline citizens, so.
yeah, okay. I mean, but, no, okay.
as am I.
Yeah.
So I personally don't see any responsibility at all to solve Bothell's problems. I was elected by Shoreline, take care of Shoreline. But looking at your math here and stuff, it looks like it's
Yeah.
beneficial to lower taxes for everybody. And I'm trying to lower Shoreline taxes any way I can. So from that standpoint, I'm okay. But
And this will also improve our levels of service too over time.
well, we
Not-
got pretty good service now here.
Yeah.
I'm not really worried about our level of service right now, honestly.
Okay.
So.
Well, this would not be a good conversation if I wasn't talking about levels of service. I think because you guys have heard me, beat that drum. a
Yeah,
lot.
you're a level
Yeah,
of service guy.
For us, for me, it's, I need to make sure that we're either maintaining or improving levels of service, or we're in such dire straits financially that we can't, and we're not in that situation, obviously.
Yeah. But I'm watching the budget for the overtaxed citizens we got here, so.
That will change. So that's why I think it's important that we have 5 people from Bothell. Like to start,
I mean,
I got no problem with that.
and that's one of the things that we do need to be cognizant of, is making sure that the pieces that, of our culture that are important continue. And we're very excited and proud of the way we operate, and I don't want anything to change that. So.
I mean, city's gonna take the fire part of Bothell's, gonna give us the money that they used to collect for the fire service. I mean, gives them opportunity to raise the taxes, like probably a little bit there.
Well, that's where that transparency becomes important, because if it's not gonna be neutral or savings, that they're standing there and saying why. And so that's what we need to, that's on the city to figure out from a policy standpoint of what they're interested in doing. But being transparent about it, not hiding it. I've seen how it can go if they hide and all of a sudden gouge, and I'm not excited about that.
Any further questions, comments, concerns?
Are you comfortable with me continuing to move? I mean, I think I've heard, is there any dissent?
Well, I got all kinds of angst, but no dissent.
Yes.
I'm full of angst. What are you talking about?
No.
Ask these guys. I'm full of angst all the time. Okay, well, thank you very much. Thanks for the questions. There are a lot of good questions. And one of the things that I shared with Josh, and I'll share with you guys because I have you all here except for Josh, and I already told him last night. Going back, I'm going to talk about the RFA, but I'm going to use an example that's not the RFA. I felt like I did not directly engage you guys enough in the PNB conversation. I've never had a vote like that. I pledge to you that I will be more aggressive in trying to solicit more conversations with you. You'll see my emails all the time, like, hey, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I think what I'm gonna do on some of these things, the PNB did not hit me as a big, like, I did not appreciate that it was gonna be a big decision. This is a bigger decision. As we get closer to making the formal decision on this, please, if you have questions, reach out to me. I'll sit down with I can't sit down with more than 5 of you. One-on-one, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, emails, phone calls, set up a time and we'll meet in my office. If I feel like, and it hits my radar, and I'll try and be better with what that radar looks like, that I'll text you guys or give you a call and say, hey, do you have any questions you want to talk? Because I felt like I kind of dropped the ball on that. And so I apologize. I will try and do a better job of engaging you guys more directly. But it's two ways too. You always have access to me. I report to you. So if you ever have questions, please don't sit. I know Barb, you and I have conversations, Kim. So and I really appreciate that because it makes me feel better that we're discussing it in a deeper way. And this, and we'll have a deeper conversation about this before we're done.
That you brought up that one source subject.
We can't talk. We can only talk about the RFA right now because that's the agenda.
Well, there would be. Oh, it would require, because the question would be, would the additional firefighters from Bothell be affected by that program? Because
I would say no. It's a commissioner.
It'd be under one contract.
Right, but this is a commission resolution
So I know
affecting our
that.
existing
That's what I'm saying.
employees.
My question would something like that affect them?
Not our existing program, but I'm hoping that over the next year or two that we've developed a
I
new
know.
program that maybe they could absorb into if we felt it, And then again, that becomes that model of, are we transferring money to help with seed money, or I don't know, that's a bigger conversation. We got to develop what that looks like too over the next year or two before our existing PNB.
More unanswered questions than we could think of right now.
Yeah. And we won't answer all of them, I can tell you that. We won't think of some, but we need to feel good and comfortable by the time we're done with, saying. So, okay.
6:12,
Any questions? I never saw Josh, so it's,
he's got excused absence.
yeah, okay.
6:12,
Thanks, guys.
bye, guys. And Rick, Jackie said, yeah, she's got the logo ready to go.